Blog Talk Radio.
Carol the Coach. Sex, love, and relationships. We talk about it here.
Carol the Coach. Compassion with contemporary relevance.
I am a psychotherapist. I can be your personal life coach, and I can help you with your issues. There are no problems too small or too big. You can talk about anything.
Speaker, columnist, radio TV host, and commentator. Carol the Coach brings messages of wellness and empowerment within reach of everyday people every day.
Almost 5 years ago, I lost my soulmate in an accident. He was killed in a plane crash. Life just, for me, has seemed to stop.
There are groups all over the city. I teach one. It is a specific way to start thinking so that you shift how you see the world, which then shifts your energy, and then you feel better and you actually see things differently.
Carol the Coach. Always available, too, at carolthecoach.com.
Now, I've got Russell on the line.
I'm 47 years old. I'm a truck driver. I'm married. I have a wife in San Francisco.
Okay.
I haven't been home in 6 months. My thing is, I don't know if I have a sex addiction or what the problem is. Why do I want what I can't have? And as soon as I can have it, I don't want it anymore.
You're right on target when you say, I don't know if I have a sexual addiction. Well, guess what? Yes, you do. And you know what? That's my specialty, Russell, so you're at the right place. Continue.
I meet women online, and I'm in a different part of the country. I travel all 48 states, so I love sex.
I hear self-esteem issues. You never felt good enough, and you didn't feel like you were getting what you should have then, and you're reenacting that now. Do you want to change that about yourself?
You get what you need.
And the show just keeps on wanting to go. Hey, I'm Carol Jurgensen-Sheets, and I go by Carol, the Coach. And this is our Monday night time to be together to talk about sexual addiction. And this is the only show on iTunes that addresses this issue, and I feel so very fortunate to be able to bring you the information, to bring you the experts, to bring you the leading examples of people who have dedicated their lives to sex addiction or treating partners of sex addiction. And, you know, one of the things I know about the Internet, I've done radio for the last 10 years, and I was on a major drive time station, the largest talk radio station in Indianapolis. And I did the Sex, Love, and Relationship show with Carol the Coach. I did just a call-in show with Carol the Coach. I helped two radio DJs with their Friday night format. So it has been my life to disseminate information to an audience. And this, by far, is the biggest and most exciting opportunity for me, because not only do I talk to people in Indianapolis, but I also talk to people around the world. I get emails and calls globally from every country I can imagine. And a lot of people are really afraid to call, although feel free to call me at 646-595-3284. You know, it's scary to call and potentially be identified as somebody who may have a sexual addiction issue. But what I got to tell you is you are anonymous here. People that are listening to the show obviously have the same issues. You're more than likely, I can't guarantee it, but I can almost promise you that you are more than likely not going to be identified in any way, shape, or form, because this is all over the world. And you don't have to worry about, oh, yeah, but I'm in the neighborhood and I'm afraid that someone will recognize me. It just isn't going to happen. So you can email me, you can call me. I can't guarantee anonymity, but I can say the chances are very, very slim that anybody would recognize your voice or your story. Now, I got an interesting email this week, and, you know, like I said, I get hundreds of emails a week from people that listen to the show and then have questions. So this person says, "Hello, Carol.
I suffer from a very interesting sexual disorder. I can relate with some of the symptoms of sexual addiction, such as bouncing around from partner to partner and engaging in sexual situations that are unhealthy and potentially risky. It is different in that I don't crave sex regularly. In fact, I only crave it when I'm single and if it's with new partners. So this person, when in a committed relationship, it sounds like he or she doesn't have the urge or the craving to go out of that relationship. However, when single, it's very important for this person to find a partner and like he or she says, when I'm in a relationship, I find myself completely disinterested. However, what I look for is potentially risky sex with new partners, and that's part of the seduction. So that's a very common form of sexual addiction. It's like the novelty of who he or she can be with, and the excitement of not knowing what's really going to happen. And then this person says, when I'm in a relationship, I find myself completely disinterested and almost disgusted by sex. I have never cheated on a partner and do not intend to start anytime soon. But the lack of interest is incredibly disheartening. I was sexually abused as a child and know that it bears significant weight in my adult life. So this person has had some trauma as a child and may be reenacting that trauma by taking control in relationships where there is absolutely no emotional connection. Once in an emotionally connected relationship, this person stops cheating, but this person also disengages and detaches from the committed partner. This is very unusual. So, I say she, but why do I say that? Oh, it's an androgynous name. It could be male or female. Okay. I am at a point of feeling helpless, and I'm not sure what avenues to take. I feel like my lack of interest will be the demise of any relationship that I'm in, and I don't want to go back to engaging in risking behavior with multiple partners. Please help. So the subject she identifies as sexual dysfunction. What do I classify this as? And I want to say, let's just call this person, Mel. Mel, right now I don't know that you need to classify this behavior as anything specifically. What you've said is your behavior is out of control and that you don't feel good about yourself when you participate in this behavior. You're right. Urges and cravings usually get worse and worse and worse. So the most unusual part of this email to me is that you say that when you're in a relationship, you have no urges or cravings to be with anybody else. However, when the relationship ends, you want multiple partners and you want risky behavior. If I didn't know that you were sexually molested as a child, I would say, okay, you're reenacting some trauma here. And when I say reenacting some trauma, what I mean is that you're wanting to act out your anger and act out your feelings and take control of the situation, but stay detached. You're not really looking for intimacy. You want to be in control. And there are 10 types of sexual addiction, and I've got to tell you that anonymous sex is one type, and it sounds like you're into anonymous sex. It also sounds like you're into high-risk sex, and you combine those two types of sexual addiction, and you need to get help from a CSAT. You need somebody who absolutely has the expertise to help you with this issue. You're going to throw off a normal therapist because they're not going to know what to do with you. They're going to see you as promiscuous, and they may or may not know why.
But more importantly, they probably aren't going to know the resources available to you so that you get the help you need. So I'm going to ask you to go to sexhelp.com, and I'm going to ask you to put in your zip code. And hopefully there will be a CSAT in your area. If there isn't, there are plenty of CSATs that Skype and consult to assist you in getting to the right resources. What I promise you is this may be a new field, but there are plenty of resources available to you, whether it be teleconferencing, whether it be sponsors online, but don't let this go. And don't fool yourself into thinking that all you need to do is stay in a relationship, because that is not going to help you, because eventually you're sabotaging your relationship, you're sexually anorexic, you're detached emotionally, and more than likely your partner is going to lose faith in the relationship, and you're going to end up disconnecting. So I really appreciate you contacting me, Mel, and letting me know what your issue is. Please take my advice. Please get the help that you need, and then we can get back in touch. And make sure to listen to the show tonight, because I have an expert on attachment issues. And oftentimes when somebody's been molested, they end up having difficulty forming real, true attachments. They don't feel safe, they have a connection, and they don't feel like they can really develop the trust they need. And so tonight, we're going to be talking with Forest Benedict. And Forest is an expert on attachment. He's actually the clinical director of LifeStar of Central Valley. And he's going to be talking about, what is LifeStar, what do we need to do to deepen relationships that are riddled with sexual addiction. If sex addiction is an attachment disorder, what does that mean? And more importantly, he's going to have resources and exercises available to help my listeners to deepen their connection with others, with themselves, and with their higher power. And that always is key to good sexual recovery. So I so appreciate you emailing in, and don't forget, Forest is going to be on here in just a couple minutes, so stay tuned to the show. Now, I want to remind you that you can go to my website, Sex Help with Carol the Coach, and find information that will help you, a bibliotherapy to get you to the right reading. I just had a woman today that said, hey, give me some good books on love addiction. They're experts in the field. PM Melody, Claudia Black has a lot of expertise with love addiction. I've done about 4 or 5 shows on it, so you can just search the shows under love addiction and listen to each one of those podcasts and get the information that our experts have to give you, because you will not likely be able to do this on your own. That's why I'm so glad you're listening in. I'm so glad you're willing to listen to the experts and take the advice that's given. That way you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and for most of you don't even know how to reinvent the wheel because you're not talking to a lot of people about this. There's a lot of shame and guilt. And what we want to do, and you've heard me say it before, is we want to make you the best people possible, and when you get through recovery, you actually will be able to actualize your potential, which means you'll not only feel good about yourself, but you'll feel good about having had this disorder and helping others. So I highly recommend that you do the work, but you got to do it with the specialists, CSATs, going through sexhelp.com, putting in your area code, your telephone number or your zip code, your city, and it will then direct you to the person closest to you. So right now, I have Forest Benedict on the line, and as I said, he is the clinical director of the LifeStar program, and that's of Central Valley. So, Forest, welcome to the show.
Hi, Carol. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. You know, I was so impressed by the information I got from our listserv about you. I wanted you on the show because I just don't think we can study and know enough about attachment theory and how that contributes to sexual addiction. So I'm curious, what led you into the field of sexual addiction treatment?
Well, you know, it really started with my own story. I definitely have the education and expertise in this area, but I tell people that my education started when I was 12 years old, because that's when I was first exposed to pornography, and that did lead me to an addiction that spanned until I was 24 years old, when I went into a treatment program myself, and it was kind of snowballed from there, in getting my own recovery, experiencing what that was like, really wanting to help others, and moving down to Fresno to get my marriage and family therapy degree, and then getting certification to specialize in this area. So grateful to be working with LifeStar, because this is pretty much all the work I'm doing is working with those who are sexually addicted and their partners, and even young people, and doing a lot of speaking on this topic, as well as protecting kids from pornography, because as having grown up being an adolescent addicted to pornography, I really get a lot of satisfaction helping those that are dealing with it, and even preventing some of the younger generation from getting caught up in this.
Well, absolutely. I saw that Porn Proofing Kids had endorsed you and wanted their audience to hear what you had to say, and I knew that would be an excellent way to get you on the show. I mean, they are a wonderful organization that helps parents to know how to address porn curiosity or even addiction in children and adolescents. So, I can tell that you've made it your mission, and it sounds like it came from your heart and your own early experiences.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Porn Proof Kids is an amazing resource. I've just recently gotten hooked up with them, and really can't say enough about their resources for helping parents. And so, yeah, it's kind of a dual mission for me. You know, it's on the prevention, kind of this movement of really standing up against easy access to porn in our culture for young people, but also working on the recovery side of things as well, and just really helping people get freedom.
And like you said, you've got a lot of education in this field, and obviously you had a burning desire to give back once you felt like you had gone through good recovery. Now tell me, what is the SATP certification?
Yeah, the SATP certification, it's a sexual addiction treatment provider, and it's through Mid-America Nazarene University. So I believe it's the first certification in this area that's from a accredited university. So it is faith-based, but it was a great program in that I think it really prepared me for understanding the attachment issues related to the sexual addiction. And so I'm very grateful to have that certification, and I'm going to be teaching in that program in the fall, helping certify others that are interested. But I certainly have a lot of respect for the CSAT community and the work of Patrick Carnes, and so this is kind of a alternate path, but I feel like it really has prepared me to do this work.
And all of us obviously are kind of partial to the certification that we got, but how impressive that you were able to get the SATP certification, and you said it was through the first college or university that you're aware of that actually had this kind of a program.
Yeah.
And they're really pioneers, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm really grateful to be connected with them still, and looking forward to working in that program, and I love anything around this topic. I think all my Facebook friends are probably really tired of me constantly talking about porn and recovery and all of that, but I really am passionate about it, so I'm grateful.
I know it's tough, isn't it? Because it almost feels like a mission to be able to bring up these tough situations no matter, I'll be with my doctor and I'll say, hey, how's your counseling going? And I'll go, well, I'm in this new specialty and it's called sexual addiction, and I'll start educating him.
Yeah.
And, of course, everybody knows of somebody who suffers. So
yeah.
It's exciting to be the messengers for this new work.
I love it. Yeah, I really love it.
What is LifeStar?
Yeah, so LifeStar is an internationally known program, and so there's affiliates throughout the U.S. and in Canada as well. And it's what it is. It's a network it's an outpatient treatment program, and so it's those that started it were CSATs, and so it's really a program that's on the outpatient model that treats sexual addicts, but also treats their partners. And I think this is one of the strengths of the program, is really treating the relational trauma of the partner, which I think is so helpful when you have a couple coming in, in crisis. So it's really a great program that I feel like is really based on the science of what we know helps people change and find healing. And so we also have a program called Youth Star that's treating adolescents, teenagers that are sexually addicted. So that's what it is. And I've been I just got licensed a few months ago and became the clinical director, and just really just love the work that I'm doing here.
Well, and does LifeStar use any specific materials in general during this outpatient programming?
Oh, yeah. There's a series of workbooks that they've created that are, dealing with pretty much all of the core issues, working through denial, working through disclosure, working through, some of the really key areas, and really not just treating it as a behavioral issue, but really getting to the roots of it, and really helping people not just switch addictions, but really get the healing that they need. And I've actually added a workbook to the program called Healing Through Connection. And so just really wanted to emphasize for those going through our program that this really is healing an attachment disorder. It's not just a behavioral, or a series of habits, but really an attachment perspective informs all the work I do. And so I've had a privilege to add that to the program as well.
That's wonderful. I thought that they had not just group opportunities or individual opportunities, but I had heard about their workbooks and the training materials they have for their clients, and it sounded absolutely fantastic. Now, tell us a little bit about attachment and how you think that contributes towards sexual addiction.
Yeah. Well, I find it interesting, and I don't think it's a coincidence that some of the research I had seen that Patrick Carnes had done early on showed that 97% of sexual addicts were emotionally neglected. And I know there's a large percentage of abuse and sexual abuse and those kinds of things, but the way I look at sexual addiction as attachment disorder is really learning from a pretty young age. When a child learns from a pretty young age that through a series of experiences, whether it's the neglect or even bullying or some kind of relational trauma early on, that really teaches them that people are not really a safe place to securely connect, and it leaves them vulnerable to substitute that real connection with addiction. And so I know I sent you this quote, but I love it. It's from the book Addiction as an Attachment Disorder by Flores. It says, no one ever escapes their need for satisfying relationships, and the degree to which we are unable to form healthy interpersonal intimacy determines the degree to which we are vulnerable to substitute addiction for human closeness. And so, when somebody continues to go to, say a sexual experience like using pornography or, other sexual acting out behaviors, that over time it really becomes this strong connection. And, that's where they go to relieve stress, to soothe sadness, calm their anger, manage their moods. And, I love to write, and I write about, basically wherever we go for comfort is where we connect. And so whether somebody, I would say not everybody that has a sexual addiction has this early relational trauma, but it's pretty prevalent. But even if they don't have that, it's really this idea of going for comfort from this sexually addictive experience over and over and over, maybe thousands of times, to the point where that becomes the primary connection or attachment. And so it's like, why would you need relationships? Why would you need, if you're sad, why would you need to go to, your friend or your partner and say, hey, I'm really sad, I need a hug, if you just have porn that you can run to and numb out and escape. So that's really what I see, how I see this as an attachment disorder, because recovery is going to necessarily mean letting go of that attachment to the sexual addiction or any other addictions, and really continuously on a daily basis learning to reach to healthy connection. And that's through connection with others, connection with self, connection with higher power. And so that's really how I frame recovery. And I think that's why groups are helpful and other things. But does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. I know that in just a few minutes you've got some exercises that can even help people to identify and strengthen that connection they have to themselves, to others, and to their higher power. So
definitely,
when you look at attachment as having, you need to strengthen those areas, or there are deficits in those areas. I was saying earlier, truly, whenever safety, connection, and trust are affected, there's a high likelihood that you're going to have some attachment issues, whether that be that you've been molested or bullied or neglected. It is going to have some very, very traumatic actions.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's unique to sexual addiction compared to other addictions is I'm sure you can attest to this, that there is such a high level of shame with this that really isolates people as well. It's like there's this feeling like I'm such a bad, wrong person. Innately, my worth is I'm innately flawed because I have this sexual addiction that makes us even more likely to withdraw, to isolate, and this idea of going towards people and going towards connection is probably the scariest thing in the world. This is not going to be an easy road.
I call that auto-exacerbating, when you're already feeling like you've got a deficit in one of those areas, and then you try to medicate it, and when you medicate with sexual addiction or any other addiction, you feel guilt and shame, and then that shame makes you feel bad enough that you want to medicate again by choosing addictive behavior, and it just cycles and cycles and cycles.
Yeah, we call that pain squared, which is you didn't take care of the original pain, and now you have the shame on top of it for how you chose to medicate that pain. So it's a terrible cycle.
All right. So now, when you say pain squared, it sounds like it's almost mathematical equation. So just give us a little example of what you mean by pain squared.
Yeah, well, like say somebody has, a really stressful day at work and they get yelled at by their boss. So they're feeling terrible inside. They're feeling this pain, this feeling of rejection. And so they go home and, go start to preoccupy about, start to think, how can I feel better, and kind of go into their rituals, start to turn on the computer, start to look for websites, and all of a sudden they've had this, acting out experience with pornography, and then they have this, huge rush of shame come over them that one, like I said, that shame that's such a part of sexual addiction, feeling like not only did they do something that they feel like was not helpful, and sometimes feeling like that was a wrong way to deal with it, but then they feel, but the original pain's still there as well. So it's the original pain, maybe it should be plus, but it's squared, I think, because it just really feeds that overwhelming, the negative core beliefs of, I'm a terrible person, no one would love me as I am. All of those just resurface. I mean, I think back in the days when I was active in my addiction, and I mean, for me it was against my values and against my beliefs and even my faith experience. Running to porn was so against that I felt so much shame. It was overwhelming, and then I would feel so much worse. And then probably, like you said earlier, I'd be more likely to run back to the porn right after that, because then it's just such a devastating feeling.
Absolutely. Is your background Nazarene also, or are you, obviously that's where you got your education?
Yeah, that's where I got my education, and actually for my MFT degree, that was at a Mennonite Brethren biblical seminary. So I'm neither of those denominations. I do come from like a non-denominational Christian background, but when I talk about even connection with the higher power, I think that kind of it really isn't set in a specific belief system, because I work with people of all different faiths. LifeStar's not a Christian program. It's really a program for everybody, and we definitely work on higher power connection as part of recovery, but that means something very different for everyone.
So the clients you work with have to have a willingness to believe in a higher power?
Not necessarily, because, we've had atheists come to us. So when we're talking about connection with the higher power, we're not going to require it, I'm definitely not going to be the one that pushes a specific belief on anyone, but what I will push is connection. And so if an atheist comes into our program and for them, going on a walk in the woods or gardening feels like a connection to something greater than themselves, then I'm going to say do that every day,
Absolutely, because again, part of addiction is that perpetual cycle of being very self-absorbed and isolating yourself, as you mentioned, and really only depending on yourself. And so spirituality is so important, and like you referenced, even nature, getting out there in nature reminds us that there's something greater than us in our lives.
Yeah, and I've heard of people even referring to their group as a higher power, because it really, there's strength in numbers. And so going to a group experience is a greater power than just trying to do this alone, So I think even that can fit.
Absolutely. So would that be one of the exercises that you might give somebody to actually deepen their connection with their higher power?
You mean the nature one, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, definitely. That would be one of them. But I would say for anybody that has a set belief system, like that believes in God, that I've worked with people that really have a strong theology. Maybe they know everything in the Bible, or they know a lot about God. But what I'm going to challenge them to do is something much harder than learning about God. What I'm going to challenge them to do in recovery is to, on a daily basis, do things that increase their attachment to God, so they actually learn to relate to God in a way that they feel like God's responding to them. So, and they feel like they're cared for, basically. They feel like it's a two-way interaction and not just let me, learn more steps that I need to follow. Does that make sense?
100%. So tell me a little bit about some of these exercises. Let's start out, if we can.
Yeah.
What daily exercises could help our listeners to deepen and develop a connection with themselves?
Yeah, well, self, I think that's such a great place to start, because it is so hard to connect with others if we don't even know what's going on inside of ourselves. And so I will encourage people to, for one, just kind of as an overview, I'll encourage my clients to do something in each one of these areas every day. Do something that connects them with themselves, something that connects them with their higher power, their partner, or a friend if they're not in a relationship, and their accountability. So every day they're doing one thing in each of those categories. But for connection with self, I've done a lot of research on this idea of self-compassion, and what I've found is there's some different self-compassion exercises. They're some of the most powerful interventions for when somebody's emotionally distressed. If they sit down and do a self-compassion break, which is this exercise where you actually put your hands like on your face or over your heart and kind of speak to yourself in a self-compassionate way, that the science actually shows that it decreases cortisol, it increases oxytocin, which is that attachment hormone that can decrease cravings and help us feel emotionally secure. And so to me, that's one of the most powerful self-connection exercises. I call self-compassion self-connection, because I think what the addict is prone to do is when they're having feelings, they're prone to self-neglect or self-abandon. And so I speak of self-compassion as a way to learn to be responsive to your own feelings and to really respond to yourself in a caring way. Journaling can be another way to do it, to deepen connection with self, looking through symbols that remind you of who you want to be and who you are, and ground you. Those are some really great examples and things that I work with. And I'll mention that self-compassion also is powerful for helping with trauma. So I really recommend it to partners as well, because a lot of them have symptoms that are comparable to PTSD, and so helping them respond when their trauma is triggered, self-compassion is just super powerful.
Absolutely. And so it might be, it's always advantageous to have the partner also be seen by somebody, but in your situation, you may have an addict call or you may have a couple call to set up the initial appointment. Yeah.
We'll have, we'll always encourage, I would say, it's usually one partner or the other, but I think we'll always encourage people to be in recovery together, to be working on their individual recovery and also the recovery of the relationship, because, almost 100% of the people that come in are in crisis. They're about to lose their job or their family or their job or their marriage, yeah, I really encourage everyone to get the recovery and the help that they need.
And I know you may not have stats on this. We've got a lot of partners who listen to the show.
Oh, good.
Yeah, absolutely. And
great.
Partners do a lot of the emailing to either get both of them more help or to ask questions, because it is really difficult. So much of the 12-step work is about staying on your side of the street and monitoring yourself. And yet, for whatever reasons, and there are many, partners want to micromanage the addict and make sure the addict's doing everything possible so that the partner, won't have additional trauma.
Yeah.
And that can be very disastrous. They think that it makes them feel like they're in control, but what it ultimately does is keeps them in that agitated post-traumatic stress-like.
Yeah.
So these exercises that you're talking about here are good for the partner and the addict.
Definitely. Yeah, all of the exercises I talk about tonight will be good for the partner as well.
Okay, so share a little bit more about these exercises, because, again, you have broken them down into daily exercises to deepen your connection to yourself, your relationships, and then, of course, to your higher power.
Yeah, and so I talked about connection with self, some exercises that can be done. Connection with others, we recommend a couple of different exercises, but something that's an intentional connecting experience. And so there's something called the 2-minute miracle, where when those in a relationship, when one of them gets home, the other one, gets up and comes over to them, gives them eye contact, maybe says, how's your day, and really is intentional about that that moment of leaving and that moment of returning as kind of a key attachment moment. And then we have another exercise called Phanos that's probably the most powerful thing that I've come across, and I learned about it in the SATP program, which is a daily, it's like a 5-minute check-in where you talk about your feelings, affirmation, your needs, take ownership, and you also check in with your sobriety and spirituality. So, again, I think that's a way of kind of creating safety in the relationship for the partners and a little bit of accountability. I don't believe in the partner being the source of accountability, but just having that moment of connection, that's an intentional connection. I think those can be really helpful for building that attachment. But beyond that, I'd say I really would mostly recommend couples therapy from somebody that's trained in this area, because, man, I mean, you know how it is. You're trying to connect with the person that ultimately is the source of your trauma, So you're probably going to need some kind of therapy from somebody that's knowledgeable in this area. So it's not going to just be about, let's do this daily connection thing, but it's really going to take a lot more work than that. And then
now, let me ask you. You said the check-in seemed to be one of the most powerful exercises, and then you gave some examples of the 5-minute check-in. So again, if you were talking to your partner, if you were talking to your partner, you would share how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Now, I do something where I say, keep the feeling simple. Let's keep it anger, sadness, loneliness, fear, happiness, shame, and guilt. So
that sounds great.
I check in one of those feelings. Do they share why they are having that feeling?
Not necessarily. It's meant to be a brief check-in, but it could definitely lead to conversation after that, But I think even just zeroing in on one of those feelings is takes work. If you're used to not one of the concepts in this addiction as an attachment disorder, they call it alexithymia, where addicts don't really have any clue what's going on emotionally. It's like they've had this lifetime of avoiding what they're feeling. So, even just naming a feeling is progress,
100%. And then partners, on the other hand, are flooded by their feelings. So they'll say, I'm feeling all of those but happy. And that's why I always say, well, go ahead and pick the primary feeling, because it helps them to identify what is the strongest feeling going on in me right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Now, what were some of the other questions that you might ask during a check-in, or that you would share?
Yeah, well, affirmation, sharing something that you appreciate about the other person, something they did, a need that you have, I need a hug, or I need a break, or I need a nap. Learning to express needs is a big deal in recovery for both partners. And then taking ownership for something, that's the O. You may be apologizing for something, or looking back on the day and saying, there's something I'm sorry about missing that, or whatever. And then the S is a spiritual check-in. I'm feeling connected to my higher power or disconnected, and also a sobriety check-in, where it's like, I'm doing my recovery today, or I got really triggered today, or I try to have kind of like a 24-hour check-in with couples. If there is a relapse, that they will check that in with the other person so they're aware. I don't know if that's how you do it or not, but
I think that's excellent. And I also like what you shared about that connecting and departing ritual of giving somebody a kiss hello and checking in with them real quickly. John Gottman, who obviously is the father of marital therapy and is the only researcher who has hooked people up electronically to kind of study how they fight and how they make up and repair attempts. He says that is one of the most important processes for all couples across the board, is to, you leave somebody, have a ritual, and when you come back into the home, have a ritual.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It's really, like I said, so many of us grew up in homes or in situations, or just, we're not, it's a whole new experience to have somebody excited to see us, it can be a really connecting experience. So I think it can be powerful and simple. It's nice to have a simple thing that can be done.
So obviously I see these things as being dual, in that if you're sharing how you feel and you're sharing what you need, even though it's relational and you're helping your partner to better understand you, more than likely you're also really identifying and learning how to express what those things are.
Exactly. Yeah, and really
now
I think
about some of the other exercises to deepen, again, relationships or even connection with higher power. Yeah,
okay. So I will teach, obviously it depends on people's faith backgrounds, but I will, some of the things I'll do is have people journal their prayers and have a time of listening to God where they just try and sense what God might be saying to them. And I would put kind of a caveat on that they try and, hear God's loving and compassionate voice towards them, and not this booming, you're not good enough voice, that they might associate with God. So another thing I do is I teach clients kind of a visualization exercise where they are in God's presence and really learning to experience God in a way that's kind of like that perfect parent that hears them, that cares, and that responds to them. So really deepening that attachment, learning to call out for help and really envisioning that that connection experience. And, actually one of the books that's really informed my view of this is called Anatomy of the Soul, and it connects attachment, the neuroscience of attachment, with spiritual practices, and that has really helped me understand this in a much different way.
And do you know who wrote that book?
Yeah, it's by Curt Thompson.
Okay, and is that a book for clinicians? Because we have clinicians that are also listening to the show, or is that a book for clients?
Yeah, great question. It would definitely be excellent for clinicians. It would be definitely on the heavier end for others, but honestly, it explains attachment really well, and even attachment with God, and the need for an emotional connection with God, and not just a logical connection with God, or belief about God. So it is pretty practical. I think anyone would benefit from it. It is from a Christian perspective. However, again, I think it's so rich in information regarding spiritual attachment that I think it's really something that anyone could benefit from.
Got it. And one more time, that's The Anatomy of the Soul?
Yeah. Yep. By Curt Thompson.
Yeah, Curt.
Yeah, Curt Thompson. He's an MD.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so those might be some exercises to raise your awareness to your own intuition, to your higher power. So, it's interesting because one of the exercises that I have my clients do is to, as they're laying in bed, very quiet and very still, they're to listen to what God may be saying to them. Now, some people hear their higher power, and they hear the actual voice. Other people feel an intuition. They just feel like they're being nudged a certain direction.
Yeah.
And sometimes my clients actually see the bigger picture.
Oh, yeah.
And so when they're really, really quiet, they will get a direct message. And if they don't, I say, well, then write as if God were writing to you.
Yeah.
They're always able to access the nugget of wisdom if they have God actually writing to them.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great exercise. Yeah, and I had somebody recently just who was kind of hung up on taking the time to do these types of things. I just kind of made it up, and I was like, just grab a blanket and wrap it around yourself for 1 minute a day, and just imagine that being God's love just surrounding you, So that was a simple thing, and Kelly McGonigal, I love her work. She's are you familiar with her?
I sure am. Matter of fact, I'm doing some post-traumatic growth work right now and doing some workshops, and Kelly is my hero.
Yeah, I love her work. I use her work in a lot of what I do. But she has I believe it's in the Neuroscience of Change CD series that she does, where she has a meditation that's connecting with your source of compassion. And that's a great exercise for anyone, regardless of their beliefs. For someone it could be God, for someone else it could be, connecting with nature or a person in their life that really symbolizes compassion. So that's a great exercise for.
Okay, now give us that book again.
Yeah, well, this is a CD series by Kelly McGonigal. It's called The Neuroscience of Change. And it's phenomenal.
Change.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's phenomenal. That does have more of a kind of Eastern flair to it, like Eastern tradition, but it's all grounded in neuroscience, and there's a lot of great stuff on self-compassion in there as well. It's a really great resource.
Excellent. Well, that's very important information to know, and she's amazing. For anybody who's out there listening and they just want a summary of her work, she has a wonderful YouTube video. It's about 17 minutes long, and it is on post-traumatic growth. And
oh, wow.
I think it's the 12 skills are life skills that you can use to be happier, to feel healthier, and to feel that you're in touch with yourself, other people, and your higher power.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. Well, we're beginning to wrap up, and tell people how they can get a hold of you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I do tons of writing. I actually love writing, probably even more than being a therapist. But our blog, where I put out continuous articles on sexual addiction for addicts and for partners and for parents, is lifestarcentralvalley.wordpress.com. I have a personal blog where I talk about kind of spiritual attachment, and that's just forestbenedict.com. And actually anyone can email me at forest@rubicekandthacker.com. That's ROUBICANDTHACKER.com. So I'm happy to respond to emails. But again, the blog is great, the LifeStar blog, because there's tons of resources. I just love writing and putting out good information. So I'd love to see anyone on there.
And I would love to remind people, because they may not know that, Forest is spelled with one R and not two. So as you're emailing Forest, make sure that you put down FOREST. And you can always email me at carolthecoach@AOL.com, and I can refer you to his websites as well as to his email. So if you don't have a pen, you can feel free to contact me. So as we begin to wrap up, Forest, is there anything else that you'd like to tell our listening audience, knowing that it's both the addict and his or her partner?
Well, I just thought one last piece I forgot to mention was the book on attachment for both partners that I'd recommend the most is called How We Love, and that's by Yurkovich. That again was also a Christian book, but there's so much good information about why we disconnect and how to learn how to really connect. But I guess my take home is that real connection is so much better than addiction. It really does satisfy, and healing is possible. Connection really is preventative against addiction, but it's so much better. And real healing is possible. I'd encourage both addicts and partners to really pursue their own healing and just know that there's hope.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad that you reminded everybody of that. And my experience is, no matter how isolated, no matter how much damage, that truly the addict does want that connection and doesn't know how to develop that. And that's where, again, somebody with expertise in this field, I'm a CSAT and you are a
SATP.
Yeah, so you can look that up. Now, if people want to work with practitioners who have their SATP, how can they go about doing that?
Well, we have, again, the university is called Mid-America Nazarene University, and that whole program is online as well. So even people that are CSAT certified, I think if they wanted the faith-based component, they could even take that class or take the additional certification. But if you go to the Mid-America website, or even just if you just Googled SATP Mid-America, we're getting ready for the next cohort. I'm really excited about this upcoming year. So we would love anyone to be a part of that process that feels like this is, a part of their purpose for being here.
Got it. Well, thank you so much, because our listening audience doesn't know how much you had to rearrange some things to be available tonight. So I so appreciate getting to hear your wisdom, and we'll keep in touch. And as you continue to write and you write that book, you let me know, and we'll get that out to our listening audience.
All right, great. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so glad you contacted me because this is such a great resource that you're doing here with this show. So thanks for taking the time.
Thank you very much. And you have a great week, okay?
You too. Thank you so much.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye. So, again, that was obviously Forest Benedict, and he was our attachment specialist today. So he did a really good job of talking about attachment and what you can do when you want to improve your relationships with others. And I feel very, very blessed to have gotten to talk to him tonight. So next week, I'm going to have a listener who wanted me to devote the whole show to her. So I'm so excited. I'll be talking with that listener, and I hope you'll stay tuned. You know, if you have a specific problem that needs an entire 45 minutes or hour consultation, you too can prearrange that with me. Don't hesitate. I don't give therapeutic advice per se, but I act as a consultant to make sure you get to the right places and talk about what sexual addiction is in general to help you to understand your partner a little bit better. So, as I say at the end of every show, there'll be one of you at all times, and I fearlessly want you to have the courage to be yourself. Being authentic and genuine and true to yourself is where it's at, and it really deepens your connections to others, your connection to yourself, and your connection to your higher power. Have a great week, and we'll talk again next Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for more sex help. Carol the Coach.